All right, I am going to jump into it. So I appreciate everyone joining me today. I am super excited about this one. It actually came out a little bit better than I thought. There's two parts to it. This is the first phase of it. The second phase is pending. I have a pretty decent sized release that I'm working on for the second half of today to get out, but there's two parts to this, and there's a lot in this first part for sure, but I'll talk about the stuff that's going to come after this release today. There were just some files and modules that were conflicting, and I didn't want to mess everything up before this call, especially since I had to reschedule from yesterday. So a quick little overview. We call it loop data. If you're familiar with the blog widget and using the blogs now, it gives you control of what sits inside of whatever you want to loop. So for example, you may have a gallery, blog post, whatever it may be. If you look at, the HTML, or you look at your site, you have repeating elements, right? And they're different, have different images, different content. Well, the concept behind the loop data module is allowing you to not only loop through data that's generated in the back end, but also give you an experience like you're actually working in an app inside the back end of Ligna. So there's two parts to it. One, if you have some sort of data collection needs from your users or yourself, and you want to store data that, just doesn't quite work inside the leads view. You may have, special records from, again, car inventory to real estate listings, things like that. You may have private listings that you want to kind of manage, just whatever you can think of that lives outside of just like the leads view and managing those records. You can now create your own version, and we're going to do that today. In addition, you can take that data and use it with the loop data module in any of your websites. And so we'll kind of go through that example. So this is live for everybody. So if you go into system, one thing it doesn't do today, even though it's prepped and ready to work for workspaces, especially in shared workspaces, it's not quite set up for that just yet. That's phase two. So this is just living in your system app section. It is role-based as well, but two parts to this: one, being able to share it across your ecosystem and your parent accounts, but also being able to assign it to a workspace and work inside that workspace. That is coming in the second part of this. But to start, you're going to come over here under system. You're going to click on apps, and you're going to click on this create loop data app. So this is, the name. This is not an internal name. This is actually the name that's going to show up in your navigation. And I'm just going to do a simple directory, just kind of do an example here and hit add. Then you're going to go into your app, and you have all these different modules. Now, if you're going to use this for your child users, you're going to have to turn everything on for the child user. So role access on the app level, role access on the module level, and then into the field section. So modules are essentially, if you want to look at it kind of how it's set up on our platform, you have a projects module and then a projects app, and then you have two modules, a projects module and a task module. Same thing with CMS, right? So whatever your app name is, it's going to show up here along with whatever icon you want to show. So I'm just going to grab whatever icon. Next, creating a module. So same thing, you're going to name your module and hit add. And then you're going to go into your module. So again, you have to set your roles for them to see it. So if you may have multiple modules inside your app, and only certain roles you want to have access to certain modules, right? So as long as every role has access to the app, and then certain roles have access to your modules, they will only see the app and the modules that they have access to. So I'm going to add a new module. I'm sorry, I already added a module. It takes you right into it. So now you have, your module fields. And let me go ahead and add in an icon here. All right, and so you should see, you're starting to see it build over here, right? At the top up here. Now, in the second release, you'll be able to choose where you want it to show up pinned it to whatever current module we have. That way, if you want it to be under marketing or under sales or under CMS, you can do that. Right now, it's default directly under the dashboard. So if you're setting this up to only give access to this and maybe some resources, custom pages, things like that, you obviously would turn off all the dashboards and everything else, and it'll always be at the top here. And so I'm going to add a module field. Let's just do company name. Oops. And just like our data form system, just like pretty much everything that we have when it comes to building fields, all those fields are available to use. And I'm going to do text input. And so there's a couple of options here that are a little different. So you have required to create. What that means is basically when you create a new record, if you're used to anything in our system, when you hit, add new lead or add whatever, there's, fields that are part of that dialog that pops up that is required to create a new record. So in this case, I'm going to require, you need at least one for them to create a record, or you to be able to create a record in the app module. And so in this case, I'm going to make it required to show up in the dialog. In addition to that, I am going to make this a column that's viewable in the, it's just like the leads database or table. So this is a column that show up. So an example of a column you wouldn't want to show up is, let's say you're doing like an image uploader, for which we're going to do. You wouldn't want that to show up as a column in your table. So view column is by default is checked, so you need to uncheck it. In addition, there's a link. Like if you're in the leads view, you can click on the first name of your lead and it takes you right into the record. There's also that little view icon on the far right that you can click on. You can make any of your columns clickable. That will take them into that actual record. So I'm going to make this one clickable. In addition, these fields here, you can do the default text or the label footnote. Those are actually tags that you can use in the builder as well. For now, I'm not messing with those. And just like the user info custom fields and the fields that you have that are grouped, you have to assign a group. Mainly because of the UI and how it all works, you have to create an actual group. So to create a group, just click here and I'm going to say, well, I already called the app business detail. I don't like that. Let's do business profile. And I'll make my field group business details. All right, and I'm going to choose just a building, I guess. Okay, again, role access. So, if they don't have access to any fields, and they won't see it if you're going to do this for your child users. In this case, I'm just setting this up as the top level. Okay, so now I'm going to set up another field, and let's do phone and input, create. Same thing, I'm going to make this required to create. I'm not going to do the view link. I'm going to go ahead and select business details. And let's do email. And I am going to choose the email address field and create. Required to create. And then I'm also going to choose business details. Okay. What else do we want? Let's do a logo. And do file picker and create. Okay, all file pickers, you're not allowed, well, not allowed. It's not an option to put in the column or put in the view create, but obviously it's going to show up in your options. Okay. So basically my app is pretty much done. Obviously you can do so much more and create all the different fields that you want. In this case, I'm making it very simple. I just have an app name, directory and business profile, and this shows up over here, right? So if I were to go into this, this is what it looks like. So obviously nothing here. Here's my columns. I also have the ability to search these columns. I can search by ID. I can search any column that I've created, and then also the created date. So that all works great. And then over here, you'll see that it says add business profile. So this is going to be your module that you set up for your app. Now, the second part of this is going to have relationships based on your module. There's going to be a setting that you just click on and say, hey, I want this module to be my default module, and all the other modules are related to this module. So what that means is when you create a record, all the additional modules are related to that record ID. And that way you could use it as just a separation. Now, we do have it separated in a way that almost feels that way. So for instance, let me add another field so you can see what I mean. Let's add bio. Let's do that. Bio, and I'll do a text area. And I'll hit create, and then I'm going to create a different group. So groups are similar to kind of like that relationship database, right? So a group is technically its own little database layer, but you can do it even further with modules when you're able to select the relationship between the two modules or three modules or whatever you got. So I'm going to create a new group and say additional information, info, and I am going to set up, let's just do that for now. Okay. So now in my profile, I can click on here and I'm just going to put, oh, you know what? Yeah, it's fine. I'll just do sample company, let's do phone. And that. I'm also doing where if you have an email field or a phone type field, that'll trigger the ability to send SMS or email. And we won't have that like, cool little timeline thing. Not sure how this is going to evolve, obviously, as everyone gets in here and starts playing with it and has a lot of suggestions. Surely it's going to turn into something pretty cool. So I'm going to go here and click on sample company. And here's all your information. You know what? Email type. That's interesting. Looks like that didn't get merged over. I am going for purposes here to remove email type. And I'm just going to use a text area. So it looks like email type file didn't get pushed this morning. So I got to push that. I'll make sure to do that as soon as we get off. You know what? I'm going to make that required to create. And I'm going to go back into my profile. Oops. You got to assign it to a group. So business details. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and put my email in here, test@test.com. You also have additional info, right? So anything you want here. So it's going to pull in. Matter of fact, even if you did like a date field, which I thought was pretty cool. Let's just do date sample. We'll use the date type, create. And I'm not going to put that in the column. And oops, again, you got to select a group for it to show. I got to get used to that. Of course, I'm sure you're used to it with other stuff. So it uses like the native UI stuff for the date. That way you have date formats, which is really cool. So, you know, you don't have to worry about the same formats. Why that's important is if you're searching over here in the leads view. So now if I go back to the leads view, by the way, if you had multiple modules here, it'll show up with the icons and the tabs for them to quickly get to it. And you can go right into your directory and there's your lead. Let me add another lead real quick. Or I say lead, another record. Second company. And second. Okay. Additional info. I'm not going to put anything in there for the loop. I'm going to add one more just so we have some good data to show on the funnel. Record, phone number, 444-888. Oops. third@record.com. Okay. So search all works here. So if you're, you know, coming in here and you want to search like company name, all these, different parameters. If you're not familiar with this on the leads view, this treats it just like the operators that you would if you're doing any kind of query. So in this case, if I want to do like opposed to exact, I can come in here and say company and then hit search. That's going to bring in, what's going on here? Company name, well, that's not cool. I was just testing it before this call. Company name. Let's do equal. I love doing brand new stuff, especially when I release. So that worked. I don't know what happened there. That shouldn't have been. Company like should be working just fine. Yeah, I don't know what was going on there. That's weird. Y'all saw that, but I'll have to investigate what was going on there. But yeah, so everything here. So your operators on obviously equals would have to be, second company, right? Or sample company, but is just whatever you want. If you're familiar with that. Also all the dates too. If you're doing your created date and between, you can do that, right? So in this case, I want to do, at this point, I just created these records. So, if you did less than or starts with or greater than dates. So all that works in here, which is cool for your created side, but, all the fields that you're searching that are within here, right? So like bio showing up here, I wouldn't want this to be my column. So you come back over here to your bio. And interesting, bio is not showing up with the option to remove from a column. Let me make a note of that real quick while I have this open. Okay, so the option to remove text areas from your columns does not appear in the email format, doesn't appear text area. Okay, cool. I will get that addressed after this call. But you get the point. You can start turning off your columns. If I didn't want email to be in my column, I can remove that. And then now on my column, it gets removed here. So very similar to the column picker. We are adding the column picker option here as well. But, as far as you setting up this app, especially for your users, you're going to want to, decide if you want the column or the view link. So when you go into your record, again, all the groupings, everything that you have here. So the way the tag format works, it's the same thing as far as case sensitive on the name. So all of these names are your tag, like company name and everything else. So everything here within the platform itself is a tag that you can use on the builder. So again, it's really simple to set this up. I think there's a lot of power in it once you get all your columns and the data you want to collect, more of a data collection standpoint as far as something outside of what we currently offer. But where it gets interesting is how you're going to use this data, on your sites, right? Especially if you, again, going back to the real estate listings or, setting up inventory and different things like that, and then want to publish that on your site. We made it, really easy for you to do that within here. And so let's kind of move over into that direction. And let me set up a new funnel. Actually, there's some messages over here on the chat. Let me kind of go through this. API endpoints ready with it. Not quite yet, but it will be. And so that will allow you to push data in. There's also going to be an import option as well in the second phase of this. And the second phase is pretty much done. I just have some conflicting files. Like today, I'm missing the email file, and there's maybe some issues here as far as the caching going. And so I'll flush that after this call and just make sure everything's up to date. But we do have a decent sized release that's coming out today and pushing all this stuff at once. So I wanted to get, the most stable version of this out. So the second part of this is importing CSV. It worked just like the leads view. So when you download your import file, it's going to have all the columns that come with, your app. And then you just import it, and it imports the same way with this. I'm not sure what the heck this is on my screen here. Not sure if y'all see this, but this is weird. I've never seen the little lines here going. I think someone's drawing on my screen right now. Okay, next as far as the in and out of that part, absolutely, API is going to be great. Of course, the import option is going to be huge for that. We need to have an email list that has an option for the recipients to opt out of the marketing updates or opt out of emails. Is using apps the best way. So the opt-out option on email, you have that appended to your email marketing campaigns, or you can use the unsubscribe. If they click on that in your leads view, you can actually sort by opt-outs, right? So you have opt-outs here, and if they opt out, so here in the search option for leads, you have this column right here. So you can actually search by date as well. If you just want all opt-outs, you can just search for all opt-outs. But if they do opt out through that unsubscribe option through the platform, then it's going to gray out the ability for you to email them. Even if you were to accidentally email them, or if you email them in an email campaign, they won't get the email because they are in opt-out status. So not sure if you need to use this for the opt-out side of it, because you certainly can do it within here, especially if you use the unsubscribe tag. Okay. So I have my, my little database set up here. I have some data that I'm collecting, and now I want to publish this data with the loop data functionality in the builder. So let me go ahead and set up a site real quick. I'm just going to call this, I'm going to use the Bootstrap sample loop data site. Okay. I'm going to clone that and go in. Okay. So the way this works, the only way you'll see this option is two things. One, you need pages set up in your platform, and you also need an app set up with modules. It's the only way this new icon will show up. So and then the second piece, it has to be a div. So if you're not familiar with our CMS, it's all layer driven. So this div wraps this image, right? I can go up a little bit. This div wraps this div and wraps this image. This button is wrapped in a div. So as long as there's a div there, you can use this functionality. So when you want to loop, so in this case, you're not seeing the new icon. And the reason why is because I don't have a page set up. And why you need a page is there's two parts to this. There's the loop data, so your records showing. And then in addition to that, there's a landing page that will show the record data. So that landing page, you need to configure or define in your website. So in this case, I'm going to create a sample page, just call it record page. And I'm going to copy from the home and hit create. Okay, so now I have a page, and now I have my app set up, and go back to my home, and you'll see this new icon appear right here, this little database icon. You can click it, and now you can choose an app, and then you can choose record page, whatever page you want it to go to. So again, you have to include a page if you want to use this feature functionality, because there needs to be somewhere they have to go when they click on it, right? When they click on a link for the record. And you don't necessarily have to use the page that they go to. If you just want to display some information, whether it be like a gallery, making it easier to upload images or whatever, and you just want it to show up on a single page, you don't have to create the URL that's going to take them to that page itself. That's a tag that you're going to put on that page. You don't have to do that. You can keep it on that single page. But unfortunately, to create the actual loop data functionality in the builder, you have to, have a page on your site. So let me move to the next piece of this. So what I want to do is, for instance, this block right here is technically looping 3 of the same elements or nodes, right? And I want to loop this version right here. So I could use this as my template, which I'm going to do. The problem that you're going to have with your template, so let me just look at this one, if this one's okay. So the problem with this, I guess this one itself, there's no wrapping div here. So if I were to go up one, oh yeah, there it is. My apologies, this is perfect. So what you don't want to loop this right? Because the problem with that is these are just what you're supposed to be looping. You need to have a wrapper above it. And I don't know why I didn't think there was a wrapper above it. To get to, in most cases, you can't, you should be able to just kind of hover over and you'll see something kind of highlighting what you want to loop. In this case, you can't get to it. So there's a little icon right here to go up one. And now I'm on that actual div. So the first part of this, what I want to do is remove the two that I'm not going to use, right? Because I just want to loop this. So I'm going to delete this one and I'm going to delete this one. Now, of course, I can access the div now because those are gone. So I'm in that div, but you saw how I couldn't get to that div and I just used the up button to get to it. You can also come to this little layers tab here and you can see where that div is and hover around it, right? So this is wrapping everything here. So that's one way of making sure you're on the div. And by the way, it has to be a div for you to be able to do this loop. So if you're building a custom site, obviously, about, HTML and you're able to get in there and really see where you want to loop your data through here. So in this case, I'm all set up to loop this. And so what you do is you just click this little database icon. I'm going to choose directory. I'm going to make a record page. I'm going to have add loop data. Now, nothing's happened here until I save. So as soon as you add it, you need to hit the save button so it activates it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now I have this little hover called Loop Data App. When I click on it, you can click on settings and you have additional options. So this is not set yet. Even though I selected my app, I want to show my module, what module I want. All right. So if you had like 10 different modules in there, you only show data from one module in the loop carousel or loop data, right? So the loop data app. So you have to pick a single module. What's cool about that is that you may have multiple modules that you want to put on the same page to show different data sets. Now, with the relationship database side of it, all the tags will work for all the fields across all those modules if they're connected, which that's part of the second release. For now, whatever data is associated, whatever records are associated with that module, this is what it's going to loop. So I'm going to go ahead and select my module, which is business profile. You have options to set your limits, right? And so, I'm going to show 10. And you also have just the attributes that show up here. So if you want to quickly change anything on the fly, you'll see your app page that's landing there. So just additional settings there. You really don't need to mess with those other than limit, app page, module, and app. So even though I changed that, you still have to hit save. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And, again, nothing's happened yet because I haven't put a domain on this site, which I need to do that real quick. So I always forget what domains I have on this demo account. And it's only one, so I should be able to remember that pretty easily. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and put a domain on this site real quick. And we'll just call it loop data secure messaging. Okay. I'm going to go out to my site now and you'll see that it's looping 3 of them, but there's no data in there, right? I haven't put any tags, but in my builder, the reason why it's looping 3, where the heck am I at? Let me close all this stuff. I do this every time. Okay. So let me go back to the app. I have 3 records. So that's why it's looping. If I were to add another record, fourth record, and fourth at fourth.com. Okay, hit add. Okay, so if I were to go back out to my site now, I have 4 of them, right? So I'm looping through. So let's start configuring this so we can start putting in the data that's associated with these tags and titles and things like that. And so the format's pretty easy. It's just like all of our other stuff. So you don't need to go into the source code or anything like that. You can just come right in here. If you are in the source code and you're working off of this, you can click here, right? And you can just change out your tags for it here and then apply and save. Or of course you can go here. The most important piece is that wrapper, right? Don't remove that wrapper or it won't work if you're messing with the code. But in this case, I'm just going to use the builder. And so the tags is actually pretty simple to remember. It's just module and then the exact format, space and everything that you set up for your tag. So if you just want to go into your field itself and just copy. So we got company name here. I'm going to set up, let's do bio. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? What do we have? Company name, we have phone, module, phone. And then we also have module dot email and module dot bio. That could have been like a snippet, allow somebody to put their own snippet in there, right? And then view details. I am going to change this to, you know what? I'm going to set up, let's set up a link for here on the company name. So we have this other tag on the link that is called, so this one's simple. This one is just called module dot record URL. And I will hit apply and save. So record URL, is that right? Yeah. So it's record, capital R, space URL. So when I save this, now if I go out to my site, it's bringing in all my data with my link. So I can click on my link. And of course, this is taking me to a page that I haven't configured yet. So we'll configure that in just a second. But now you have all of your looping data with your records. If I wanted to do a photo as well. So one thing about the photo image, let me go into my record here. Let's just grab what I got in here. Just do this thumb. Okay. So this is the fourth record. So if I come over here to the image tag and click this, right? Of course, you can't file upload or anything. You're gonna need to click on the settings icon and you'll see the source. So I'm going to change that source out. What did we call it? We called it logo. Okay. So I'm going to change the source out to module.logo. Now this is going to print the full path, but it's not printing like the image stuff, right? It's just printing the path to that file and the file name. So it needs to be in an image. So again, the easiest way of doing that is to come in here and put it in on the source, right? Like that. Can't do replace image because obviously you're using a tag. And then I'm just going to go ahead and save that. And of course, no image shows up with that. And so on my loop data image side, oops, I didn't apply that. Hold on real quick. So let me just make sure I got that tag in there, right? Yeah, I didn't apply it. Module.logo. And then save. Okay, so it's a huge file. Obviously, you're going to want to format that or use, you know, a different type of style. None of these are showing up because I actually don't have that image that's in there. Now, what would be cool is if you don't have it not show up, like our if-then statements within there. So that would be pretty cool to do that. So I need to think about how we address, you know, like images that don't exist for the actual record and not showing. And we'll probably have to use the if-then logic for your image side, because that would be interesting, or maybe a default image or no image, because it's interesting. If I was going to build out like, you know, a directory or whatever, just some records and things like that that I want to show on my side or advance or whatever, and it's user generated data. So people have come in, they're in my user roles and they just didn't upload a logo or didn't upload something. I want to have something there so you just don't have something blank like that. So I got to think through how we're going to do that or what we're going to do with that. Okay, so that's that. Now we need to set up our page with all of our tags. So again, the loop data module, it has to be in a div. You know, if I were to just hit this div and put this in here, this text will just keep repeating of how many records I have in my limits that I set. Over here on the page itself, you don't have to do any of this stuff. So you don't have to put in, you know, the loop data attribute or any of that stuff. You just have tags, just like the blog. So I'm going to come over here to my page, record page. And actually, I'm going to swap this out with that image. So, oops, what am I doing here? Let me grab this. And I'm going to make this my, so the tag format is record dot whatever you want. So as long as it's record dot and it's on one of the pages that actually has a module and there's an active record, it's going to apply this data. So you don't have to worry about, you know, any of it. It's kind of like the blog, right? So on the blog, you have the ability to, you know, configure your default, and you don't have to worry about having that loop data attribute or any of that stuff. You're just putting in your tags. Same thing. It's record and module. Modules for the looping part. Record dot is for the record. And again, it's just the format of the file. Oh, what am I doing? Of whatever the field name is and everything else. So let me put this in here. I'm going to do record dot phone. Record dot. Oh, okay. I'm going to go ahead and save that. So now when I go out to my records and I click on the fourth record, that's what I'm seeing. So I'm seeing my whole page set up for me that's associated with this. Now, this is where it gets interesting for your page. That's where you can use the if-then logic with the get parameter. So get.r. So for instance, if I don't want this to show, if you haven't watched that video or understand that, you can actually manipulate the landing page based on the record. That way you may have just a nice little lander that gets indexed that has a form on there. And so that'll allow you to kind of associate with that. You know, as far as someone going direct to that without the actual record ID in there. And that'll give you, you know, another landing page that you can get indexed and help with SEO and things like that, opposed to the actual record itself. So, you know, this is going to evolve, obviously. You know, I've already started thinking about this as far as the image not being there, you know, how we're going to address that. Again, you can use the if-then logic that we have as far as the parameters that are involved. So that may be a path to do it for now, but I'll think through this as far as the image standpoint. I may have the tag provide a default image that's no image. I don't know if that would work good for your designs or things like that. So at any rate, I'll think through that. But again, you know, this is as much data as you want to collect on anybody or whatever you're trying to put in here and leverage it on your site. Again, like if you're doing, you know, galleries, right? Those are easy. You know, as far as the image standpoint, in addition, like, you know, again, car inventory, real estate and stuff like that. The second phase of this is the search capability, you know, on your site. I didn't have enough time to pull the search widget into this release, but there's a search widget that basically all you're going to do is add that search widget to a page. Sorry, wherever you want in your content block. And then you have to create a page that's related to the search. So you can call it results, you can call it whatever you want, just like how you had to create a page for the actual listing itself. You're going to create a results page. And basically all you're going to do on that page is select your loop data app, you know, and make sure that module's there, and your search widget that you drag over, that's going to automatically search to the page that you want it to go to. So you got multiple modules and multiple search pages for those modules. I'm sorry, you can have a search widget that you can search to a specific module to the same page. And so it'll pull the data based on that module itself. So that's coming as well. But I mean, as far as like getting started to, you know, go through this, set up your app on the back end, set your columns, get familiar with the format for your funnel. By then I already have the search functionality out, including the relationship database side of it, the import piece to it, and then the appending of the navigation of where you want it to go based on the apps that we currently have. And then, of course, the lander. So that's that second release. There's also another piece to this with the user info that I talked about on Tuesday. I wasn't able to get that out either. But this will at least get you familiar with the Loop Data app and get a better understanding of how you're going to use this, you know, with your current setup. So let me go through some of these questions that are up here. Okay, so I answered that. Is there a way to accomplish an update email preference option for them to choose to get certain types of emails, for example? Yeah, so that's definitely, I know that's not related to this, but that's definitely something we're doing with the unsubscribe piece for your, excuse me, not only for user notifications, because there's a lot of notifications that come from the system, but also your email subscriptions. And then that way you have categories, essentially labels that you'd be associated with those update email permissions. So yes, that is definitely coming. I have some loop fantasies about Google reviews or any other kind of testimonials. Absolutely, testimonials are cool as well to leverage here, right? To be able to come in and just quickly add some testimonials or make it easy for your client to add testimonials to their website, right? That's always been a challenge for your client to contribute to the website. If you're building, like even for us on the white label services, we offer free maintenance that come with those services, mainly because, there's all sorts of ways that they can go in and just mess up the design, especially if they're not familiar with, the builder in general. And so it just makes it easier for different dynamic content blocks within the site for your customers to manage those records, right? You could easily call this app testimonials or reviews, gallery or whatever, and make the dynamic pieces to the site all in those apps, and then turn off the CMS and turn off, the builder for them. And so now they can come in and create these loop data attributes or loop data records that control the site. So that's a great usage for even for us, right out of the gate to make the site just much easier for the loop data. Because again, a lot of these themes, depending on how they do their galleries, their lightbox galleries or their, revolutionary sliders and things like that, you have to go in and sometimes know what layer you're on to change out the image. You have to duplicate it, and sometimes you're not duplicating the right record. And so those things, again, other builders have, dummy proof those, give you very little, if any, control of those. And you have to go and upload your little image here and create your little records for those widgets to show up, like in WordPress, right? Those are terrible when it comes to injecting code and making your site bloated and all this stuff. But it's great for the end user, because the end user is not, who has very limited knowledge of the builder, is not going to be able to come in and duplicate, a testimonial or duplicate a gallery page or gallery section. It's not hard if you know what you're doing, but every theme is different, and so things like that can get out of control when you open it up to an end user who hasn't ever used the builder before. However, anybody can go in and set up a new record for their profile. For their image gallery or for a testimonial or whatever, as simple as you deciding what fields justify to create a new record. And then once that record's created, they go in and they have all their different options for the gallery or for the testimonials and all the data that you want to collect. And now that user's just going in there and using that app to do that. So most definitely. Yep, tons of possibilities for sure. Event schedules, yeah. So I was thinking about that yesterday, as far as like managing events, right? I mean, you can set up your events with your Zoom data, your Zoom links. You can set up, virtual events or physical address events, and making it so simple to come in here and create an event and then plug that into your website to show, or your customer's website. I mean, that's absolutely huge. So pretty much everything that has to do with dynamic content. And what's awesome about this is, again, think about the amount of plugin junk you would have to build into your WordPress site or Elementor with all the different modules and draggable modules. If you've ever looked at the code that needs all the assets for that stuff, it's unreal, because they're not leveraging a theme that already has all these elements. When you go and acquire a theme, in most cases, they're already going to have a default gallery, a default, events page, a default, whatever it may be, testimonial section, all the JavaScript, the clean code, all that stuff's already existing. Now you can turn those sections into dynamic loop data, making your users very, very simple for them to come in and leverage that and expand their site without you having to do anything, right? Them just coming in here and, adding to that. So super excited about this, especially what comes out of it. And of course, as it evolves, it's just going to be one of those unique factors that we have in here. So next, yes, definitely all those great examples. CPTs, I'm familiar with the CPT solution that WordPress has. I've never used it. I know there's another one that's similar. I'm not sure how it's like this and what it looks like, if it's similar or not. But what I really like about this is the customizations that you can do on the fly without having to get into the development side of anything, really. Being able to use these tags, being able to loop data, and especially if you're, a more advanced website setup, when you can start looking at maps, right? And you have these JSON data that comes through, right? The JSON data that's being pulled over, passing that over to that file through the loop data. There's a lot of cool things that you can do with that. Okay, so yeah, exactly. I agree on the brilliant directories. Now, the brilliant, as far as directories, this is interesting. I talked about this on Tuesday. The user roles is technically, if you set it up properly, could be an entire directory, and that's where we're going with that. The only problem is it sits in your profile. So that's where that second half of this release really works, where you can append it to one of these apps. So it becomes a module inside of this. And so you just name it the same way. And so you have your groups that would be basically the groups of the fields, just like this. So it would look just like this, because if you're familiar with the user info, it works the same way. The only thing you're doing is appending it to a module. So when you set up a module, you have an option in the user info field for your group to assign that to a module, and then these tabs will show up in that module. Why that's helpful is because you want the user who signs up to not have to go create a record to contribute to the overall listing or loop data, right? So this is going to give them the ability to, or you the ability to not only do it in the backend custom pages, but also do it on your website same way. So it's going to work the exact same way, by the way. It will pull that data instead. Okay. So allow an array field. So that's interesting. We need to, that'll be super cool. The part that I would try to understand is how you would use that as a tag that's rendered as a string, and then put that as an array that you can do something with. So certainly interested in understanding what you mean there. The question was, does the module allow for an array field? And so that the multiple files is an array field. Of course, if you had your own arrays that you dropped in there, what we could do with that on that field. I just have to look at it, the use case, and figure something out. So super interested in hearing that. So currently loop apps are only interactable with CMS for CRM, or can we also use some tags in internal pages and let's do some calculations on the values, similar things? Yeah, so right now the tags are only available in the CMS. However, it will be available in these custom pages. So if you want to set up a custom page that pulls that data in with the loop data attributes, whatever you want to do, if you want to have some stats or something like that, or figure out how you're going to pull in that data to use in different ways. So certainly want that to be available throughout for sure. Is the record page URL SEO friendly? I think it should be something like, yeah. So that's another piece that we have to get done on the SEO side of it. So I have different ideas for that, and certainly would love some feedback on that. So there's folder names that we can automatically require designation for the record view. You see it, especially on like Yelp and other ones. There's a folder like R in the front of your domain, and that will allow us to justify that this is the record, and then be able to pick what field would be the record name, right? So company name, whatever it may be. So that is in the works right now. As far as an SEO standpoint, all the tags you use, from the sitemap to the, whatever it may be within here, even though it is a get variable aspect on the SEO side of it, you do have the capability of getting these indexed and ranking, but I 100% agree with you on the actual name itself, the folder name. So that's definitely coming for sure on that side of it. And again, as far as like not sending it to a single record level, record page, you can provide more detail on that loop data, so you have your records, kind of showing dynamically for an SEO standpoint, which you do control the page name. So that is certainly coming, and how we do that and what we do, I'm not exactly sure. So the SMS update is with the email update, and that's one of those lingering, unfortunately, been so far behind on all the updates that many of those files need to be converted to the new system. I'm working through those. I know a lot of people want that update, so I need to get that out as quickly as possible. Same with country tags and currencies for sure. Yeah, the app features the future Ligna design building, in my opinion. I agree 100%, especially as we evolve this. Can we create a database of HTML blocks and then include in a quadrant of the builder UI? So that's basically the theme engine, if that's what you're talking about, as far as the drag and drop component of it. Creating those HTML blocks and then dragging them over. If you can explain a little bit more. And I scan down to the 404. So that 404 absolutely should be ready today. It's actually different, and this is why there was a delay on it. So I did have a option underneath your settings that we talked about to where you can set the content for the 404. However, I quickly realized that's not a real good solution, because your header and footer doesn't exist. And you're just throwing some content in there, and that's not going to work, right? Because the header and footer lives inside of your actual page with a global block. So what we're actually doing is putting a page type called 404. And so that page type, you can design it however you want, put whatever you want in there, and then also, obviously has your global block header and footer. So that, unfortunately, I was not able to get out this week. So that is coming, and that's how it's going to work. It's no longer going to be a tab under here because you just lose all control. Okay, so this approach is brilliant because we can reuse the CSS design from themes when importing themes. Absolutely, 100%. Are you planning to support relationships between different modules, multiple card modules related to a given card? Yeah, so that's part of the second piece of this, which is already basically test and improve. And I just was afraid things were going to break. Like even today, I'm missing a couple of files in this release, which is not hindering you from doing anything other than email type in here. But basically, all it is when you come into your module, where the heck am I at? Let me go over here to System, Apps. So you're going to come over here and you're going to create a create a app. And then inside your app, you're going to create these modules. When you're inside a module, you're going to have a toggle button right here that's called a relationship database, relational database. And so what ends up happening is when you check that box, you can only have one module as the top database of it. If that's checked, then every module in the app is no longer a view. So for instance, when you come in here and you click, you lose this view. So let me show you real quick. I'll create a, let's call this second module. So if I create this second module, add a little icon there, just do search. Okay, so if I come into my profile again, let me just go in here. I have my second module here, but if I click on second module, it's actually a whole nother module for creating records, which is not ideal for your example, right? So I have to create my fields and what are required there. However, when you toggle on the relational piece to the module, you can only have one. So if I were to make this one and toggle it on, then when I click here, this actually takes me into the record with all the fields and groupings. And so what happens there is that record ends up having all that module data that's related to the record ID. And so what ends up happening now is when you set up your modules, what data you want to display still works the same way in the website, where you're showing just the module itself. But when you go into the record, all of the tags work. So you can have a whole section just for certain details or whatever. And again, it's if you look at it, these groups are basically the same thing. It's just a whole nother layer. So for instance, in your example here, where you have, multiple car examples, for a car dealer, you would have all these different groups with all your different data that's associated with it. It's all associated with, even though it's all just a bunch of fields, it's broken up like you would do that type of, relationship between databases. So you have a broken up of fields. But yeah, that's how it's going to work. You can have as many modules as you want, as long as you have one of them, set to relational, then you'll have all of these modules go in. You won't leave this record. It'll just be every module that you have all your data associated with, and that unique ID is associated with all of those. And then you can use the tags across the board. Right now, it's like a whole nother module, right? You come in and then you add your whole record specifically for that module. Okay, unrelated, but when sending email, what is the tag to refer to the sending email? I don't follow. So if you want to rephrase that or explain a little bit more on that, I'm not sure I understand on the tag for this email integration. So the tag referring to who the sender is. So if I sent, interesting. I don't think that tag exists. I can certainly create that tag. Let me think. I don't think I have a tag for that. I'll check. As a matter of fact, today I'm publishing all the tags. I'm about 75% of the way through there. So shipping country, shipping provider, tax. Yeah. So those different modules are going to be connected based on the record ID. Now, next layer to that may be the ID associated with a certain field. So that gets a little more complex on how we would associate that, with it. But as far as the record standpoint and having different modules associated with that record ID and updating that data, that's part of this second update. But there's a lot of different ways that you can become super complex with this, as far as mapping fields as a unique identifier for the next module, which would get super interesting for sure. And so it's going to evolve there. So out of the gate, the best that we're going to have is modules related to a record ID, and then the data fields that you set up, or module fields that you set up associated with that record, if that makes sense. So yeah, that is, it seems easy, but there's so much use cases behind this and where it evolves and where we go from here. I'm super excited about it, especially as we start evolving how you use it on your sites and things like that. But yeah, all the different fields, everything that you're, basically building into this, the ability for you to show this data on your site, not only is super important for us as a white label service provider building websites for clients, it really does make you a little more dangerous when you start offering, these types of customizations to your website, right? So like always, I'm happy to stay on and answer any questions. If you have any questions about this or need me to see, more into this, certainly feel free to start typing in some questions. I may have missed it, but can you have a form to create records to put on a page? Not yet. So that is another piece that honestly could be really, really simple, because we're leveraging the exact same form system that we have for our form builder and everything else, and being able to embed, these fields outside of, Ligna to use that. As far as setting it up right now, it's just a matter of your create fields. So whatever fields that you create here, obviously it's all internal, but external forms would be super cool. And then of course the import piece would be great. But yeah, so that's definitely something I didn't think about, but we can certainly accommodate for that because it's using the same engine that we currently have for our data fields on a data form itself. So definitely doable. So the best way to comply with can spam, I mean, there's obviously you're going to want double opt-in list. Obviously, making sure you have the unsubscribe tag for your one-off emails or your bulk emails. If you're doing this through the campaigns engine, it automatically puts the language at the bottom for them to, remove their list. So, for me, that'll cover a lot, especially with our SMTP vendors. That's a requirement. Although that is a minimum requirement, there's also the ability for, different frequencies and things like that will help out for sure. The unsubscribe tag is just, let me see if the screen's big enough here. Let me go in to the funnels real quick. So it's just unsubscribe, it's curly brackets. Here, let me do it on this one so it's bigger. So it's just this and then unsubscribe. So this generates the link. So you don't have to put this in an href. Just put that at the bottom of your page or wherever you want it to show up. It'll print the unsubscribe link. Now, if you're doing the email marketing engine, that the language that's in there is exactly the way it is. It's not editable. It shows up at the bottom. So yeah, so I know that unsubscribe page is terrible. Yes, we need to adjust that for sure. It's bare bones. It has no design on it. It needs to have the wrapper from, like the login page. That's definitely been on the list. We just haven't got to it. It's actually really simple for us to do that. So I need to adjust that for sure. Yes. So that's honestly on the bug fixing and backlog stuff. That's really a lot of the last half of this year that we're obviously enhancing every element of it. We have, just a list of things that are rolling out in this June 30th list release that have a lot of those fixes in there, right? So a lot of feedback on different things that's been addressed, but there's obviously stuff that comes up. This thing has been in the works for a long time now. Something that we've had extreme needs to develop, and it's been going on for some time now. So I'm glad it's out. Of course, it's going to evolve. And everything else within here, obviously, as we go through and clean a lot of this stuff up and improve and enhance, that's the beauty of the second half of this year, really. We do have a lot of cool little updates that are coming out, but nothing major other than the accounts and contact page and the language option to change out, every tab name throughout the system. There's not too many that are as big as this or as big as a usage module or any of that stuff. So definitely looking forward to, a lot of those things getting pushed out. All right. So yeah, just to quickly recap, if you've already set up your app and you have your data and you're trying to figure out why you don't have that icon, you got to have pages set up and you got to be in a div and you'll see this little icon here. And yeah, it's pretty easy. Once you hit add loop data, make sure you hit save and then use the tags through that. Definitely, I'll check your porting status as soon as we jump off of this. So be able to update you on that. Cool. If anybody has anything else, like I said, happy to stay on. If not, we can all get back to hopefully cleaning up this weekend or this week to enjoy this weekend. So if you think anything else, hit me up on chat, hit me up on the Facebook group. I appreciate everyone very much and hope you have an awesome 4th of July if you're here in the US. So I appreciate you.